Hello, governors. Welcome back to Power Squared. Today, we're going to be talking about assessing before building in Power Platform. What we're going to be trying to help with is, as a maker, if you have an idea, how do you assess that idea, make sure that it's valid, and you can kind of take that forward before getting to that build stage. There's a few things we can do to help with that. There's some tools in Microsoft kind of COE Starter Kit that can help, and other tools as well. Hopefully, by the end of this video, you will have a clear idea on approaches you can take, some of the questions you need to ask yourself, put forward your idea, and really champion the way you build an app. Charles, do you want to take the stage and talk to us about some of the tools that are available?
Yep. Thanks, Josh. So the first thing that I wanted to do was look at what we've got available to utilize within the COE Starter Kit. So if we go to the core components of the Center of Excellence Starter Kit, we can have a look at all of the different apps that we've got within there. And one of the ones that we've got is the COE Maker Command Center app. And within here, you can make an environment creation request. So this is kind of one thing that you could do. You could say, can I have an environment? You need to tell the admin what connectors you're wanting to use. So you need to have a decent idea as to how you're going to build it, or you just don't choose any and you speak to them afterwards. But you basically say, I want to create an environment, and this is the reason why I want to create it. But that's really after the assessment, isn't it? So it doesn't really help too much.
I guess that's a good starting point, just to have a safe space to create something, isn't it?
Yeah, and it brings the awareness to the Power Platform admins that you want an environment for doing a particular thing. So they'll be aware of, like, this is why you want the environment, you want to build something. So another thing that you could look at is if you go again into the Center of Excellence components, this time you're in the governance components, so you need to have that installed. And there's an app here called Developer Compliance Center. And within the Developer Compliance Center, you can go to your app that you've created. So you have to have actually created an app, but you don't necessarily have to have built it. It could just be a blank app for now, and you can give your business justification. And so with the business justification, that's where you can say, oh, this is why I want to build this app. This is why it's important. And then you've actually got some justification against that. So that's, again, kind of going towards what we want, but not quite the right kind of thing for us. So we've got two things in the Center of Excellence Starter Kit there. They don't really hit on what we actually want from things. So then Microsoft have provided some other things, and we'll have a quick look at those. So one of them is the Innovation Backlog app. And this is an app that's been around for quite a while now. And as soon as I scroll down to the screenshots, you can tell it has been around for quite a while. So yeah, it looks very old school. It's not very user-friendly, but it kind of does the job. So you would go through this process of filling in all of the details as to what you're expecting from your app. So let's have a look up a little bit more at things. So you say what the app is going to be doing, or what the solution is going to be doing, what the description is of it, what are the pain points of your current processes, which is quite an interesting thing. You look at who it's impacting, how many people it's impacting. So again, useful information. And then similarly to the environment request, you're looking at what tools you're going to use. So what connectors are you going to use? And then you go into the measuring of the idea. And this is probably the bit where we're most interested in assessing our idea. Is it going to save time? Is it going to bring some other value or some other benefits to the organization? And that's really where you want to get to when it comes to assessing. So it's useful from that perspective, but you can imagine from a governance perspective, if you give this to your makers, it's probably not giving off the most professional impression. Because if you're showing that this is the app that you want them to use, then they're probably thinking, well, that's the level that I need to go to when I'm building my app, which is obviously not a very high level. So yeah, again, I'm not really sold on this one.
First impressions count, right?
First impressions are massive, absolutely. So there's one more thing which I wanted to cover, which is the business value toolkit. Although it's quite a clever thing, it's not really for assessing your solution. It's really, once you've built your solution, once you understand how much value it's giving you, this is when you then assess that value. So it's more a post-creation thing, but quite interesting to look at, because essentially you give it the details of your solution that you've built or your app that you've built. You then give it some measurable insights on it. So if I zoom in a little bit on this, so you can see that we're talking about reducing workplace injuries, which then means that you're saving money in whatever it is, insurance costs or something like that. So that's a nice way of assessing the benefits that you get from something. And then at the end of it, you can have these cards that show you nice KPIs on it. And then you can publish the story as a success story. It uses up AI credits. So it's something that you're going to need to pay for every time you're processing these. But it's quite an interesting one. Again, this isn't really doing what we want it to do. So, okay, Josh, with the COE Starter Kit and with these apps that they're providing, none of it's hitting the spot. I'm out of ideas. I need help. Can you help me?
What outside of the technology, outside of providing something technical, what kind of questions should I be asking myself about an idea that I have in my head? Power Platform is of technology of choice because it's enabled in our organization. How do I assess with just basic questions or something else just to figure out if that's the right thing to do? Because it's really easy to get tunnel visioned into technology. Maybe you've even picked it before you even thought the idea, so there's some questions we need to ask. Charles, what do you think would be some kind of starting points as someone that has an idea, thinks about Power Platform as a possible tool of choice, knowing that it's an easy accelerator to get an idea going? Where could they start?
I guess one of the things you want to consider is, are you creating a new process, or rather a new piece of software for this process? Or are you swapping over from something existing? And what are the differences between the two? So if I build something in Power Platform, am I going to be saving time? Am I going to be saving money? Let's say that you're currently using an off the shelf piece of software, bit frustrating to use because it doesn't quite fit your needs. You want something more customizable. So then swapping over to Power Platform means you're probably going to reduce the cost because you're not going to have to pay that subscription fee, but also you're going to be faster working with the software that you've created because it's going to be bespoke and made in the way that suits your business process. So you're then looking at trying to calculate how much money am I saving with the subscription? How much time or money am I saving through spending less time working through these processes? So those are two things that you can think about. What else can we think about?
The consideration, I think, as well, is around the idea itself and the problem it's solving and the scale of the problem. Because, a lot of the time you can think of a problem, maybe you're doing something day to day and it's taking a good portion of your time to complete manually or otherwise. And, you start thinking about automation or streamlining and making that process more easier to deal with. But actually, this process is really complex. And to build it would take considerable amount of time. You then have to think to yourself, is this the right thing to do at the right time? Or could it be broken down into smaller chunks? Because, there's a thing, right? If you try and take too much on at once, it's probably going to fail, right? You're not going to get the kind of relevance out of it because you can't prove the value. You can't do that without, having something tangible. And chances are you've bitten off more than you can chew, right?
Yeah, I was thinking about it in the context of, let's say that it's a train and the train is going through multiple stations, but maybe there's from one station to another, that part of that journey that you can make faster. And that
Uh-huh.
you're not going to impact on the other journeys that it makes to the other stations. But if you can replace that bit with a faster bit, then you're getting the value there.
Exactly. Yeah, it's starting small, isn't it? And then expanding on that idea. And, we've talked about this before around, coming up with that MVP, that minimum viable product that's going to actually showcase and demonstrate value from the get-go, but then has the ability to be kind of expanded as people start maybe adopting the technology, you integrate that more with the overall process, more things come into the kind of fray. You're gonna find that it's gonna be something that you're gonna want to expand. But having something small, tangible to begin with is a lot more easier to justify and assess than something really big. So that's something to think about when you're assessing your idea is can it be broken down into something smaller? What's the kind of smallest part that we can start with?
And then the other thing that you're reminding me of is that whatever you're building, it might have an impact on the business outside of what you're thinking of or outside of your scope. So it might be something that you need to reach out to other team members and say, I'm looking to build this. How does this impact on what you're doing? Or reach out to the people above you and say, I want to build this. Do I have permission to build this? Do you have any business plans that this impacts on? And then also the other side to it is just integration. Like, if we're talking about this train track concept, like, does it integrate? Can you take the train at this train station and keep the journey going? Or if you take it, are you turning it into a flight instead of a train journey? And it's not going to work the way it should work because suddenly you need to implement security clearance and things like that. So it's just that idea of making sure that the whole business is aligned to what you're doing and it makes sense for the business or for the organization.
Yeah, completely agreed with that. And just to touch on a couple of points and to add to that as well, if we're assessing an idea and it's using a connector, but that connector is for third party data or, it's touching sensitive data, then you're probably going to struggle to get off the ground a bit quicker compared to using a connector maybe that isn't premium or something as such. There's lots to consider on the technology as well. And likewise, and span on some of those points just mentioned there too, is has this already been done? Has anyone tackling the same challenges within the organization? Thinking about, is there a community of practice in your organization, like make a community that you can reach out to and just say, hey, look, I'm thinking of building this. Has anyone done something similar? Because that might accelerate your idea as well. Or someone might chip in and say, actually, we've done this for our kind of process and it fits very similarly to yours. Why don't we, get on a call or, here's what we've done. Let's kind of knowledge share a little bit. So you then start to kind of bring these ideas to life a lot quicker. So again, I think that's just a small kind of sneak peek into power community, right? So it's really important to kind of think about that as well.
And if you have those people who have built something before, you've obviously got a decent ecosystem in Power Platform and you've got support around things. But maybe you're the first person to build something in Power Platform or you're in the early days, you don't have many people who know Power Platform. Something that's really important there is just to think about the support of whatever you're building. So if you're building it, you need to support it or you need someone available to support it. What happens if you build it and you leave the organization? Who's that going to be left to and what's the impact of that? I think thinking about the actual full life cycle of the software is really important as well.
Yeah, and I'm sure it's not the first time someone's inherited an app that someone's built as a passion project, and it's kept them up at night with how challenging it's been with them, supporting. So yeah, it's really important to think about those aspects as well. As you've got that idea in your head, you can build it, but there's a lot of other kind of auxiliary things that kind of have to happen and need to be considered. So you've got to take that all into account when you're thinking about what your idea is and the scale of it.
Something else that is really important is you have this idea. Let's say that they've listened to what you said and they've decided to scale down their idea a bit because maybe they were thinking a bit too big and they were thinking about replacing multiple departments' processes. Now they've scaled it down. So they're just doing from station A to station B instead of across multiple stations. But still, they need to think about, is this something that makes sense for them to build with their experience? You don't want to be tackling something that maybe has lots of sensitive data and is quite a complicated process if it's your very first solution. So if you're very new to this, start off small, build a few things, get used to it, and you'll come to understand the things that you should look out for and better ways of doing things. But I guess the other way to think about that is that if you do have quite a strong ecosystem in Power Platform, maybe there's someone you can partner with and they can help you along on your journey. So you can build and you can then have what we would call maybe a code review and say, look at what I've built and can you tell me if there's something wrong with it or something I should change?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of power in having someone else kind of buddy up with you. And if you don't have that, even if you can reach out to someone in the wider community, that's invaluable as well, because you'll learn so much when you start building that you'll then come to realize when you come back to your idea or your app in a year's time, think, why did I do it that way? So, it is also a learning opportunity as well. If you're new to this, it's a good idea just to get stuck in and learn. So that within itself could be the value that this kind of idea brings rather than anything kind of tangible to the business, that learning element too. So yeah, something to consider, I think.
And I think looking at it from a career perspective, many people have had this path into Power Platform where they've discovered Power Platform and they've got excited by it. They've built something and they've ended up having a Power Platform career from something completely different. We've seen it time and time again. And so, another thing to consider is if you're assessing an app to build, is to think about, well, does this offer great value to the organization I'm working for? Does it offer me an opportunity for career growth internally or externally? But there are opportunities everywhere. And so when you're assessing what you're going to build, you want to think about what is the impact to the organization? Is this going to bring a load of value to the organization? And how can I leverage that to enhance the organization as well as myself within that organization?
Yeah, that's a really good point. And the other thing I wanted to pick up on is actually kind of around the architecture, around your assessment when it comes to thinking about what tools you should use for the job. Because Power Platform, it's not just a Canvas app, right? There's lots of different tools that come together to build a solution. So when you are assessing, you've got to think about all of these kind of business justifications. But if you're new to this, or even if you're not, trying to think about what technology fits the bill the best and trying to form a bit of a picture. So, when we talk about data, are we thinking that is Dataverse a good option? Is Dataverse even enabled from organization? That's a good starting point. If it is, then it probably makes sense to try and use that. If not, then do we have to go down the SharePoint route? It's simple things like that. And then also thinking about the use case, could a Canvas app fit the bill? Or, if we're using Dataverse, then maybe a model driven app's a better option because we can get to MVP a lot quicker. Does Power Automate need to come in? Can we use a low code plugin? There's all these different kind of components that you need to think about and kind of consider as part of your assessment journey, I feel. So another really important aspect inside of the thought process, really.
And this is where the governance really comes into play, isn't it? Because there's a chance that you want to use something that you're not allowed to use in your organization. Maybe it's a connector, maybe it's one of the tools, maybe you're not allowed to. Maybe you're using Plan Designer and it suggests using a Copilot Studio agent, but you're not allowed to use those. There are no Copilot credits for you to use. Or maybe it wants to suggest you creating a Power Pages website. And it's highly unlikely that citizen developers or makers are allowed to use Power Pages because it can be quite a dangerous tool to have because you're exposing Dataverse data, potentially sensitive data externally. So yeah, you need to look at the governance aspect of that and can I actually build this? And if I can't, then I need to reach out to the people in governance or to my IT team and I need to say, look, I think this is a great business case that I've got here. I think this would be an amazing piece of software, but I need your assistance in order to get it off the ground. Maybe I can't do it in Power Platform. Maybe we can collaborate and I could do a mix of it in Power Platform. And for the other parts, you could get your IT team to develop it.
Yeah, it's a really good point. And I think that kind of brings us back full circle back into the starter kit in a way, right? Because we look at the environment creation tool that when you get to that point, the fact that you can select your connectors and give the purpose to the environment, it is quite a powerful thing when you start to kind of bring it all together. But not everyone has access to the starter kit. So it's a nice to have, and building that kind of case up for your assessment kind of most physically, pen to paper type way is sometimes a better option if you don't have the technology to support it. But at the same time, if you don't have any of that, this is a great reason to look at it because these additional tools will help overall with things like governance and disputing the innovation backlog and the business value toolkit. That might not be the best way to go down, but even just getting things like the environment requests in and stuff is a good, in my opinion, a good kind of healthy thing to do if you haven't got that already. The takeaway from this is you've got to do a lot of thinking and consideration before you just go in and start building. Power Platform gives a great platform to get going quickly, and it allows you to fail fast and really bring ideas to life really quickly and accelerate development for both makers and traditional developers. But it's not something that you can rush into. You've still got to have wider discussions and more wider thinking around what it is you actually want to do. Charles, any closing thoughts from you?
Yeah, I'd like to give a story about my first app because I think that that's quite an interesting one to go through. Essentially, there was this process. I was working for an energy consultancy company and they had engineers across London who were walking around buildings needing to record meter readings. So for electricity, gas, and water meters, they would write down the numbers for them. And they were writing them down on pieces of paper. So there was time lost in creating those pieces of paper because you'd need to list out all of the meters, and the meters would change sometimes. And then there was time lost in writing down those numbers. So handwriting them down, then scanning them or taking a photo of them, then sending them over to the company that I worked for, and then someone transposing those into a digital format, or I suppose they would be PDFs or images at that point, but turning them into actual figures in a database. So that's a lot of time that you can imagine being wasted there. And there are multiple ways that you could approach that. So one way that you might decide nowadays is you might think, well, AI is all the rage. So let's get that PDF or that image and let's use AI to understand what the figures are and automatically put them in our database. But when I was doing it, I didn't think that that made much sense. I thought it makes way more sense to build them an app. So I built my first Power App, and it's just a really simple Canvas app. Didn't take me long to make it all. And I was quite excited, so I put a lot of effort into it, but probably like 2 weeks to make it as part of my job, not my entire job. So I was doing it part time. And then it meant that there was this app that we could deploy that they would then use their mobile phones, walk around the building, typing in the figures. It could then do validation on the figures. It could show them what the previous figure was that they had entered, all of that kind of stuff that they didn't have from a piece of paper. And when they click that submit button, it's immediately in Dataverse for us to start processing. And it immediately can calculate the consumption from that as well. Whereas previously, we would need to actually type those figures into the database. So the reason why I'm bringing up this is because I think that that kind of scenario is a really good one for a first app, or a really good one to where you're assessing an app. Does this make sense to build in Power Platform? Does it make sense for the business? Is it going to help people? Do I need to worry about different stakeholders? So for that, yeah, I engaged with different people. I double checked that I knew what everyone would want from that kind of process, that it would work. The engineers weren't within our tenant, so we were needing to share with external people. So I had to make sure, can we license these people? Can we share externally with them? But yeah, basically all of that process, got it figured out, got everything deployed, and then they're saving literally thousands of pounds through using that small Power App that took me 2 weeks to build.
It's really interesting, I think, is a good example of assessing and realizing the value of Power Apps, right? And there's so many stories similar to yours of people who've kind of started out that way. So it's a really kind of interesting kind of thing to kind of consider and think about if you're thinking about doing these things.
Yep, definitely. So I guess the one thought that I wanted to leave people with from that perspective is what I was looking at that process from the perspective of was what's causing the most pain. And for the business at that point in time, that process was causing so much pain because it could be that someone's written a 7 and you read it as a 1, and then that costs someone thousands of pounds in recharged electricity. And then maybe it can end up in a lawsuit because you've got the wrong figure in there. So there was loads of pain from the process, and there was even more potential pain from that process. So when I'm looking at assessing a business, I'm thinking, well, not just where can we save time and things like that, but what's causing the most pain for people? Because that will also have an impact on the wider business. If you're experiencing pain in a process, you're not going to enjoy your job as much. Therefore, your staff turnover is going to be higher. It has this massive knock-on effect on everything. So where is the pain, basically?
Perfect.
So yeah, hopefully that's plenty for people to think about. And yeah, thanks very much for watching. And don't forget to like and subscribe. And please leave a comment if you've come up with an idea, or if you've built something and it's worked out really well or turned out to be really bad. You can learn from both sides. We'd love to hear about it.
Thank you.